Hello and welcome to the Sky Blue Times YouTube channel. Today I wanted to give my quick thoughts on Semenyo. I've got loads of different graphics, just going to give my thoughts on those different things, the player, different qualities, etc, etc, and just go on kind of rambling about those few different things. At the moment it looks like Semenyo has absolutely chosen Manchester City as his clear choice. You still have the discussions between the two clubs, between City and Bournemouth, whether they play the release clause, whether there's a different way that they proceed, but still maintain the value of that release clause. There are things up in the air on that front, but in terms of the player side, he's made that choice. That seems to be quite clear from both Ornstein and Fabrizio Romano. The player wants to move this January. Release clause, I think, lasts for the first 10 days, so this is a deal that will move very quickly. I think he will miss maybe 1 or 2 games at most, but if it happens quick, for example, I think we have a game on the 7th, so he could possibly make that game. So it's going to be fairly quick turnaround, I think, assuming that the clubs are able to get that sorted within the next couple of days. And yeah, I think it's really refreshing. Before we get into all the stuff with the players, it's refreshing to hear that player has chosen you above all of these other clubs. There are a lot of obviously good options in there, even with the situations that some of these clubs like Liverpool, when you're looking at what they can offer in terms of Champions League forward, Champions League football, the players that are there, and so on. There's definitely a lot of appeal. So yeah, for him to pick City, it's really good to see, especially when you look at some of the other players that have come in and picked City. And yeah, as we'll get onto in this video, there's a lot of qualities that make Semenyo very, very appealing. I think the important thing to remember is you're looking at his qualities for the squad and for the forward line, and then also to bear in mind that we are not Spurs. We are not a team that is expecting to buy a player that can play against every single team, all the different types of ways opposition will set up. We're not looking for that player, if that makes sense. We do have a squad. That squad will be used. There will be games where he will fit in. There will be games where he won't be playing. There will be games where you'll need him off the bench. There'll be players like somebody like Shirky, Foden, Doku, Haaland. These guys, as brilliant as they have been, cannot play 60 games a season. They do need to be kept fresh and rotated at different points in the season. There will be opportunities for players to come in and out. There will be the need for players to come in and out. And as we've seen of late, you need players that can impact the game off the bench, and you need players that can offer a genuine competition for places. It's not that Shirky needs to play every single game. It's also that you haven't got the guy on the bench that is knocking on the door that Pep's feeling terrible about leaving out because his performances are so good. When he does get the opportunity, when he does come off the bench, you need those performances from players. So yeah, I wouldn't be worried about minutes. And in terms of the type of opposition, I would just say this is probably the most forgiving time for a winger to come in, because we do have lots of games, and I think if everybody's being honest, you look back at the Premier League games we played this season, they are not games where we have 80-90% field tilt, the opposition sitting a low block, no pressure at all, really deep inside their own box, and we have to break that down. We do not play those games every week in the Premier League. We will play some of them, but we do not play every single game like that. There's quite clearly an intention from City this season to play more in that middle third and not squeeze the opposition all the way deep and dominate that territory. They want to have that space in behind and the space to play quickly and accelerate the tempo into the final third. So there's more games like that. You think about when we play Everton at home, Burnley at home, Sunderland when we played them. These were not games where we were from minute 1 to the 90th minute pushing the opposition deep into their own box and squeezing all of the space away from them. And then there are games that we've seen against Liverpool, against Dortmund, against Bournemouth, against Manchester United, where we have played in transition moments. We have played quickly through those kind of man-to-man presses and then had that space to jump into, the way the Premier League is at the moment. There are lots of different games and lots of different situations within games with the way that City are playing this season, as well as the way the Premier League teams are playing this season. that lends itself to the strengths of Semenyo that he's shown at Bournemouth, as well as there's a lot of qualities I think will just be very useful for City to use in the way that they set up. So we just move over to this one over here. This is just a quick look at our squad. You get to resubmit, I think it's 2 extra players for the Champions League, the second phase of that, so into the knockout rounds and the qualifying rounds. We'd expect to not have to do the qualifying rounds, provided that we win our next 2 games. Should be more than fine. We missed the 2 qualifying rounds, which ideally we will definitely not want, given we've got those extra games in the League Cup, and then you've got the FA Cup to come up. You don't really want those extra 2 games in between. As well as that, you're adding in the games you need to win for the title. It's just not 2 extra games that you would want. But anyway, that second half, you get to resubmit. So if we were to do this, and I'm going off some of the noise that I've heard, Ortega, I think, playing absolutely no minutes, turned down moves in the summer. This is a guy that could definitely go on. I think he'd do a job for a lot of teams in the Premier League that need a keeper. Nathan Ake, there's been a lot of noise about him needing minutes this season with the World Cup coming up. The comments by the national team, Dutch national team manager. So I think those are the kind of 2 obvious ones that could go. I think when you look at the rest of the squad, then these are not the numbers of players. When you're looking at the attacking players, the 8s, the wingers, the strikers, obviously Haaland tips it a little bit in one way. Those are not the numbers that you would want to get rid of, right? So those are the kind of numbers of players by position that you would like. I think the departures come from the players. It's driven by their search for minutes, depending on how the season pans out. I think in January, what you do is you lock down that squad as really as much as you can, and quite realistically, you can do that to have the depth to push on this season. And then in the summer, that's where you reassess. And players like James Trafford, I expect in the summer we'll be looking at moves, but him going to a place like Newcastle won't be available until the summer, and that is a much better move than him going to, say, Wolves in a relegation fight and then getting drowned down to the Championship, and then you've got to look at another move. It's a lot more messy. There's going to be a lot more teams with better options, with the finances, the spaces open up to make these moves for players in the summer. So I think that's very much what you do, and also to bear in mind that somebody like Bernardo Silva, more than expect him to depart on free in the summer. City will honour that contract. John Stones, again, they will honour that contract, depart for free in the summer. This will open up spots in the squad as well moving forward. There's players that you'd expect to come in. You see all the links to Elliot Anderson and so on. That's where you see a little bit more of the churn to move the squad in an even better direction. But I think what we're looking at right now is a team definitely in a great spot, looking at those Champions League games coming up in the knockout rounds. Semenyo is homegrown, lots of value there in the player. You then add to the fact that he's not gone to AFCON, so he's there to make that move and come in right away. You add to the fact that the release clause has to be sorted within the first 10 days of the window, so the deal's going to move very, very quick. The price it's at, I think, is at the upper end of what City will be willing to pay. You don't need to do a back and forth and bring down the fee with Bournemouth. You know exactly what the value is, and then it's just negotiating the details, or whether you activate the release clause directly, sorting out the payment terms, etc. So I think all of those kind of combine to make this deal a lot more appealing, on top of obviously being a player that has played for years now in the Premier League, has delivered for a few seasons now in the Premier League, looking to make that step up at a good age. And as we'll get onto a bit later in the video, brings a lot of qualities that this City front line doesn't have. And yeah, as you can see here, I think that is what we could be looking at in terms of there. There's still wiggle room when you're looking at the homegrown players, 6 out of 8, non-homegrown players, 16 out of 17. So there is still a good amount of wiggle room within that squad size there. And with the departures of players like Grealish and Walker, Stones to come up in the summer, you'd expect we need to find the next guys that are homegrown that will be at the club for years to come. So that is why you look at somebody like Semenyo being homegrown, has the potential to do that. Somebody like Elliot Anderson, Adam Wharton in the summer, again, those guys have the opportunity to come in and be here for several years as homegrown players and fill those spots. So that's going to be something I'd expect them to look at in the summer. But yeah, we're here to talk about Semenyo, so we'll move on from that and not go too much into the squad. This I start with 'cause to me this is a game changer. If you're a City fan watching the video, I expect most of you will be. You've just seen the impact of Ryan Cherki being two-footed in the Premier League, being able to go both ways when it's a dribble, the pass, the shot, etc. You've seen the value of that creatively as well as the kind of deception it gives to the opposition players. Semenyo is not all the way to the extreme like Cherki is, but he is still an absolute outlier in this regard compared to other players in the Premier League, as you can see right here. So this is percentage of shots taken with either foot from the 24-25 season in the Premier League. You can see Semenyo here ever so slightly leaning over to his left foot. Somebody like Phil Foden is almost exclusively with his left. Somebody like Kovacic almost exclusively with his right foot. Semenyo has the ability to take shots with both feet, to be able to pass with both feet, cross with both feet. So yeah, that definitely adds a lot of value to him being able to play on either side, to be a threat to score from either side. You're not looking at a winger that on one side is able to score goals, but then on the other side can be really quite limited. Semenyo doesn't have that concern. It also feeds in to his dribbling as well, able to use both feet to be deceptive when he is trying to move past the opposition players. And when he's running at pace as he is a powerful ball carrier, we'll touch on a little bit later. When you're when you're a defender trying to deal with that, and you know he has no issue going either way, and he's moving at you with pace, and he has the strength to brush you off, just makes that all the more trickier situation to deal with. Move on to this one. This is just reinforces what I mentioned about him being able to score with both feet. This is 4 of his goals in the Premier League this season already. I think he's got 8. Which, if I remember right, there's only Thiago and Haaland that have more goals in the Premier League this season than Semenyo. I think he's tied with Ekitike and a couple other players. This goal against Burnley more recently, ball comes out and he's able to jump on that loose ball and shoot with his right foot across goal. This one over here against Manchester United, driving into the box on that right-hand side versus the left over here. Right-hand side over here. With his right foot, scores across the goalkeeper here. This one over here against Liverpool, making that run into the box, the ball cut back across, uses his left foot to cut it back across Alisson over into the far corner, coming from the right hand side over to the left with his run. And then obviously in transition against Liverpool, that long, powerful carry. I think it was off a set piece situation that he's then able to drive forward. Against Liverpool, Konate trying to defend that, as I mentioned, being able to use both feet, powerful ball carrier, moving at pace, very tricky to be able to deal with that. You don't have that kind of obvious sign of like move him onto this foot or that foot. He's going to be a threat either way, and makes him very, very tricky to read. With this one, scores with his left foot from the edge of the box. So as I mentioned, he is more than comfortable shooting on either foot. That feeds into him being able to play on both sides. That then gives you a lot of options when Guardiola is looking at wingers, that he needs to pick 2 wingers because he wants in that game to be able to hold the width and have those two players comfortable moving up and down the touchline. Semenyo's on the list for both wings. You don't need to worry about that. So if Jeremy Doku is really quite suited to playing on the left, then Semenyo can play on the right. If you need to rest Doku and you're going to bring in Semenyo, and you've got somebody like Semenyo who prefers to play a little bit more on the right, he's more inclined that way. As much as he's comfortable on the left, he's definitely more comfortable playing on that right hand side. Then Semenyo can play on the left, no problem. So you have that flexibility with those 2 players. Which yeah, if you're Guardiola and you, there will absolutely be games where you do not want to play with 2 fullbacks holding the width. You want the option to change it up. Semenyo is going to allow you to do that much more when you're adding him to some of your other options on the wing. This is his heat map. I think it's only a couple games short on this current season, but you'll get the point anyway. This is the last 4 seasons with Bournemouth in the Premier League. Played mostly on that right-hand side in that first season. Fairly even split in the 24-25 season. And then this current season, he's played mostly on that left-hand side with a few games on that right. But yeah, I wouldn't be concerned about him being able to generate shots, to beat players, to get into the box, to create chances, to take to put crosses into the box. I wouldn't be concerned about any of those from either wing from Semenyo. I think if you're going to lean him one way, he's probably a little bit more inclined to create on the left and a little bit more inclined to shoot and score from the right hand side. But ultimately, I don't think there's very much between those two. And I think when I was looking at the numbers of games he's played on either wing for Bournemouth, as well as for his career, it's a fairly even split, both for Bournemouth and then also across his career. This one, really interesting one from Ishdeep. This is looking at players that touch the most grass in the league, the widest touch coverage, minimum of 800 minutes. And I think it's very interesting. So that you've got Elliot Anderson up here, you've got Anton Semenyo up here, Lucas Paquetá that obviously had the link to City and the move that fell through. Declan Rice as well, he had that link to City. I think they are definitely looking for players that can do this, that are just able to cover a lot of ground. Phil Foden's been exceptional this season in that regard, all the way across the pitch, deep into the defensive third, in the middle third, as well as that player in the final third that we've seen in previous seasons. Semenyo being able to play on both sides is why he comes up here, as well as drifting inside, dropping deep, and so on. And then obviously Elliot Anderson, that this video is not about, and we might be doing a video about him in the future closer to the summer. But yeah, I don't think it's a surprise to see him on here as well. Just move over to this one. This is great app, WT Analysis. They do an app. If you check out the account, you can go on and you can look at individual players and look at them by position. This is just one of the many lovely graphics that they do. So definitely go check them out. This is him just for left wings. He's played mostly for that this season. And I think just highlight some of the areas. So this is his pass reception locations on the left wing, high up the pitch for Bournemouth. Attacking event locations, where he plays mostly on the left. But the most important thing for me, which is why I put this graphic in there, is this here with the defensive actions locations, nice and deep. On that left-hand side, I think that's one of the things to bear in mind with the impact he could have for Manchester City when you're looking at him playing on the left-hand side or on the right-hand side. I think we'll see plenty or both, because Doku's not going to be able to play 60 games this season. He is going to be able to get back and support that fullback, whether that is O'Reilly on the left, that is Matheus Nunes on that right-hand side. He will be able to get back and shore up the team out of possession, being a player that can play both ways to get back and deal with those situations, which will be very, very useful for the team. I think out of possession is one of the kind of biggest gaps in the team that we can make an improvement this season. I think when you look at Rodri internally, when you look at Kusanov, if he can get into the team a little bit more often, those are two players internally that don't necessarily need to play every single game, but are two players that can make a big impact out of possession. But to come in, Semenyo is a player that can make a big improvement there, as well as all the qualities that we'll touch on a bit later when it comes to his impact in the final third. It's also important to bear in mind that minimum level of performance from him out of possession is going to be a much higher bar than what we've seen consistently from somebody like Semenyo. I think Jeremy Doku is improving out of possession, and Guardiola's mentioned this, but he is not somebody I would classify as kind of like a top-end winger out of possession. Obviously brings a lot of qualities going forward, but he is not that player, and he could definitely improve, but I don't think the very top end of his ceiling is going to be a player that is exceptional out of possession. But Semenyo is that player. So even if he's coming in and he's not maybe hit the ground running that most people would like, if he's able to deliver top performances out of possession at a bare minimum, then that is going to help the team a lot in many games this season. This is just a quick comparison on a few different metrics between Semenyo, Doku and Semenyo this season in the Premier League. No real surprise, and this is the big difference between those players, is the outlet that he offers to win aerial duels. So I think when I was looking at players to win, to take 30 plus shots, win 30 plus aerial duels in the Premier League this season, I think there's 5 or 6 players that are there. All of them are strikers apart from Semenyo. In the Premier League for For aerial duels won, only Kevin Schade has won more than Anton Semenyo among Premier League wingers. So that is a clear skill set that Semenyo is able to provide for the front line. That is useful alongside Erling Haaland. That's another option for Donnarumma to hit the long balls over the top. And also, if Erling Haaland needs to take a rest and you're going to play Omar Marmoush as a striker, well, if Semenyo still starts on the wing, you still have that option in the front line to play over the top into, and then Marmoush can then play off the balls that Semenyo is able to win. So that's important to bear in mind with Haaland, without Haaland, giving you that extra outlet to play over the top of the opposition press. Clear quality that Semenyo would provide to that front line. As I mentioned to the start of the video, you want to look at the group of forwards that we have and what skills he's providing. Ball recoveries, Semenyo a little bit short of him, but that's definitely a step up from Semenyo compared to Jeremy Doku and compared to Semenyo for the most part. I haven't got on here possessions won in the final third. I think I might have something coming up in a minute. That's another thing. I think when I was looking at 24-25, Semenyo was winning possession at least once per 90 in the final third, whereas Semenyo, Doku were somewhere between like 0.6, 0.7. I think Marmoush was definitely 0.7. So there was definitely a gap between Semenyo and the players at City when it comes to winning those balls really high up the pitch. Along with that size to win the aerial duels, you also got that more physically imposing play in the first line of the press. That brings a lot of value. You look at our game against Aston Villa, for example, when you've got Semenyo on one side, Bob on the other side, Bernardo, Foden, etc. pushing up high in the first line of the press. These are not players that are physically imposing, that are going to shrug you off the ball like De Bruyne was in his prime. We haven't quite replaced that player. Somebody like Anderson that we've been linked with can definitely do that, and that would be a summer move if they go through with it. But if we're looking at Semenyo coming in, he is absolutely somebody that can do that. That is reflected by his tackles won as well, higher than Semenyo, higher than Jeremy Doku, 1.06 per 90 this season in the Premier League. Passes blocked, I think he is the best player in the Premier League for this. He is decisive in cutting out passing lanes, 1.56 per 90. That feeds into the number of balls he's able to recover. Playing for Bournemouth, big step up from Jeremy Doku, 0.29, Semenyo 0.76. Then we get to the kind of goal scoring angle, looking at shots on target, 0.76, 0.77 compared to 1.19 of Semenyo. So you're guaranteeing yourself that one shot on target every single 90 minutes from him. I think this season he's taken a dip in terms of the volume. So compared to 24-25, the volume was really quite high. So I wonder if at City, what you'll just see is that this sort of season will continue the same sort of level in terms of being efficient. Whereas at Bournemouth last season, he was getting many more shots on target. And if he moved it in the summer, you probably would have seen that drop. Whereas I expect that to kind of continue on. XG significantly higher, 0.11, 0.13 compared to Semenyo, 0.34. Perhaps you'd want to see that come a little bit higher, 0.4, 0.5 if he does move to City. So that probably be something to keep an eye on. Goals per 90, obviously ahead of Jeremy Doku, ahead of Semenyo on 0, and Jeremy Doku 0.1 compared to Semenyo 0.5 per 90 on the goals. Creatively, getting into the box, this is where Jeremy Doku is miles ahead of the wingers here, but also miles ahead of pretty much most wingers in the world right now. Graph is a little bit short, so it doesn't really do him entirely justice, but 7.29 shot creating actions per 90 this season in the Premier League. Semenyo 3.81, Semenyo 3.5 now. Moving to City, that's another area, like I was saying with the XG, where you can be fairly concerned that that's not as high as you'd want it to be, but also you'd expect him to take that leap forward. That's something to keep an eye on, but Doku 7.29, that is up there with some of the best individual seasons by Premier League attacking players. We're talking some of De Bruyne's best seasons are between 7 and 8 shot creating actions per 90. That's how impressive Jeremy Doku has been this season, so don't use that as kind of the barometer of kind of like the minimum. Like, that is exceptional. And you see with Semenyo here 3.81. I think last season he was more 4.5 to 5. So if Semenyo comes in and he can get that number up higher, then definitely you'd want to see that. Same sort of thing continues with the successful take-ons. I think Semenyo 1.56 is still like 97th percentile, so very high amongst wingers in the Premier League. But Doku is just the outlier, 4.32 successful take-ons for 90. Always makes me laugh seeing that. Carries into the penalty area. This is something that Semenyo is very good at, 3.42. Doku even better, 4.51. With Semenyo 1.75. Passes into penalty area. Semenyo has that little bit of an edge over Semenyo, 1.5. Doku miles ahead, 3.26. So those are the kind of areas you'd want to see him maybe take a leap, because he's going to see a bit more of the ball, have better teammates, maybe be in better situations compared to what he was in at Bournemouth. Doku is obviously a big outlier there to bear in mind, but those are the kind of figures where, like XG, you'd want to see him get into better chances. The number of chances he's creating, you'd want to see that increase at City. And then on the flip side, that's why I think some people will be a little bit concerned about those sort of numbers. But you've got to also bear in mind all of the other stuff, right? The out of possession, the outlet to win the aerial duels, what he's able to do pressing-wise, and what I mentioned at the very start in terms of being able to shoot on both feet, play on either wing. These things have to come into it and balance out the argument, rather than you just looking at he's not able to create loads of chances against a low block. At least that's what you haven't seen. I don't think that should be the main angle. And also, more importantly, I don't think that's why City are buying him. We've got the players that can be those creative players against low blocks. What we're looking at is the other qualities that he brings that our front line doesn't have. We just move over to this one here. Continues to reflect what I mentioned with the aerial duels. Spencer Mossman, completely recommend checking out his account that is on X, puts out loads of great content. So make sure you do check him out. This is our front line when it comes to aerial duels and successful take-ons. So in terms of beating plays 1v1, as you can see, Jeremy Doku is way ahead of anybody else, even remotely close to him. But when it comes to winning aerial duels, Semenyo is up there with Haaland in terms of the volume of duels he's able to win per 90 minutes. We don't have another player quite like that. So as I mentioned a bit earlier when you're talking about, see like Marmoush here, if you're going to play him instead of Erling Haaland, but you add Semenyo to that front line on one of the wings, you still don't lose that ability to play over the press into somebody that can actually win those balls. So I think that will be very, very useful for City in different games where they're going to rotate Haaland, as well as obviously adding that to the front line to have those two options to play over the top into. This is looking at presses per 90. I just wanted to do a quick comparison between some of the City players and then you see with Bournemouth with Semenyo. So you've got Jeremy Doku, 14 pressures per 90, 3.8 for counter pressures. Semenyo 14.3, Shirky 13.8. That's what we're looking at from some of our wingers. Foden, Bernardo play a lot more centrally, especially in the press higher up. Oscar Bob, I think, and it'd be interesting to see what happens with his future. But in terms of out of possession, Bob ticks all the boxes for me. I think a lot of his game, and just a side note on Bob, for me, it's all about between the ears, and it's that decision making in the final third. I don't think the quality, and I don't think the kind of ability of him all the way up to the final third is something that should be really questioned. I think he has the quality to be a City starter, a City player for years to come. But the final action and then the way that his confidence has dropped game by game, that's the area where he's struggling for me. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see where he goes. But he tops this, and it shouldn't be a surprise that he tops that. You can see it in the games that he does play. You then move over to Bournemouth penalty, Semenyo 16.5. So that would be an increase on Jeremy Doku, Semenyo, etc. in terms of the pressures per 90. There obviously are going to be a lot of kind of intricacies in this, the type of press that we use, and that's something that is a very, very much unknown. You don't know. Guardiola could continue to use a central press. He could use Semenyo in the first line next to Haaland. He could go back to pressing with the wingers. and he can definitely change it quite often throughout the season. So we just don't know the way that they're going to press. But at least from looking at the kind of raw numbers, you know that Semenyo is going to come in and do a lot of work off the ball. You then look at the totals as well. For Semenyo, he is third amongst Bournemouth this season, 295 pressures, 63 counter pressures, 9.4% of the team. So he's doing a lot of work for them. And I think perhaps not. Obviously, the pressure system is not going to come in and be exactly the same. There's going to be different things, little details to be learned. As I mentioned, Guardiola could change a lot of stuff, but he is coming in with a very good education on the out of possession side. A coach in Areola that is very up to date with the kind of way that modern teams are playing out of possession, hybrid pressing, and so on. So he's going to have a lot of kind of good experiences, good coaching from him compared to somebody like Shirky, where he has a lot to learn out of possession, and maybe not like the conversation will be about the kind of physical qualities that Shirky doesn't quite have, but also mentally, like he's not worked under a coach that is going to teach him quite like Areola would have taught Semenyo. So I think that gives him a really good chance to hit the ground running out of possession, as well as obviously all the numbers that are pointed out for how well he has done for the last few seasons. This is another one to look at his work out of possession, combative out of possession. This is from The Athletic. Ball recovery, 7.4 per 1,000 touches, 15th. And that is amongst wingers and wide attacking midfielders in the Premier League since the beginning of last season. Aerial duels, 4.1 per 90, 5th. True tackles, 5.5 per 1,000 opposition touches, 13th. And then interceptions, I mentioned earlier about the passes he has blocked. True interceptions, 3.1 per 1,000 opposition touches. He is third amongst wingers and wide attacking midfielders in the Premier League. So another graphic that backs up everything I mentioned in terms of him being an important piece out of possession and a big improvement for the team out of possession if he is to come in January. This is the one I was kind of touching on a little bit earlier in the video. Very effective as a player winning the ball high at the pitch. City definitely do want to press high. I think that's something that they'll want to improve over this season and then definitely into next season between players internally and to come in a transfer window. You look at the way Bernardo Silva's used at the moment, doing a job, but obviously not a long-term thing they're going to use, with his future expected to be elsewhere next season. Semenyo is a player that's going to offer a significant upgrade at possession for the team, playing hard at the pitch. This is second ball winners at Bournemouth last season. Another account, really recommend you checking them out. Semenyo won 44 second balls last season for Bournemouth in the Premier League. For Manchester City, Guardiola was first with 30. Rico Lewis was second with 28. And then I think it was Mateo Kovacic with 23, who was third. So Semenyo would be first if we're just going off that. Now, similar to the pressing, there's going to be situations, the way the team is at Bournemouth, that will lend itself a little bit more to him having more opportunities to win second balls just because of the way that they play. But still, it highlights that he does have the ability to win those balls, which would be very useful for City, no matter how we press, to add that ability to the front line. This is him after he's recovered the ball. So again, as I mentioned throughout the video, another account I recommend that you do check out. This is his post-recovery sequences. So after he recovers the ball, what does he do? 79.3% passing accuracy post-recovery. So he does take a lot of risk, as you can see, 8.6 for the successful progressive passes. Likes to progress the ball after he recovers it. And one big standout is these long carries that he's able to offer, which we just don't have. So when we're talking about somebody being an outlet for players once they recover the ball to pass to him, for him to then do those long carries, but also for Semenyo to get back, recover the ball, and then drive us up the pitch. He adds that quality to the team that the Doku is very much like stop and start. Semenyo is not quite the kind of physically imposing player defensively that can win the ball back, quite like Semenyo, as much as he has that pace to move up and down the pitch. Oscar Bob, similar to Doku, a little bit more stop-start. But Semenyo offers that kind of long carries, powerful, lots of pace, that will definitely improve the team. We move on to this one. I mentioned aerial duels a little bit earlier in the video. This is him for passing accuracy after retain the aerial. So how successful he is at winning an aerial duel and passing it to a teammate. This is a percentage of aerial duels turned into pass attempts. So a lot of his aerial duels, over 40%, are Semenyo trying to pass to a teammate. You'd want to see it move into this category here. You can see Erling Haaland down the bottom there as well. You'd want to see him move into that one and be a little bit more successful. But he's still in a good spot when you're talking about players that you're going to play over the top into. And he's not somebody that is all the way down here. Look at Van Heck as well. You don't want somebody that is able to win a lot of duels but then very poor at passing them to another teammate. And so, yeah, Semenyo in a good spot here. Ideally, you'd want it a little bit further across. And I think when you add players around him like Haaland, Foden, Shirky, Doku, etc., when you add those kind of technical players around him, I think you'll see those numbers go up. This is 23-24 Bournemouth. Semenyo, progressive actions, a lot of passes, a lot of carries on either side, more than comfortable. That extends as well into last season. Carries on either side, more than comfortable, particularly these long, powerful carries, as I mentioned throughout the video. Long distance carries, and then you've got all those passes into the box. This also includes the passes after the carry, and I think this is definitely something that you'd want to see an improvement, and you're kind of wondering what would be the impact of Semenyo playing with some of these better players. So you don't see a lot of these successful passes, but you do see a lot of the intent to play the ball cut back across the box, and that's a quality that a skill he definitely does have. Those kind of powerful bursts, pass a player 1v1, and then can drive the ball into the box, cut it back, which is something City been very good at this season, which Doku's done very, very well. Semenyo has shown he can do that, but converting those chances, I think that's something you'd want to see with Erling Haaland. That if you add him into the City team, you add this ability to the team, and he's making these moves. Is the difference that because you add Erling Haaland, that more of these chances are going to get scored, and then these numbers are going to go up. That is something definitely to keep an eye on. Has no issue. This is from the 24-25 season. As I mentioned, has no issue on either side, dribbling into the final third, into the box, and consistently getting shots off, which is what we're looking for in our wingers. And Semenyo, as you can see, on either side, has no issue getting into the box and getting those shots off. This is deep completions per 90 from outside the box. So these are passes played outside of a kind of 20 meter radius of the opposition box. Passes that are played inside that box. Jeremy Doku tops it, been exceptional this season, created lots of chances, and those kind of passes he makes once he moves inside and then puts it into the half space for some of the runners into the box like Nico O'Reilly, been exceptional. But also, if you look at the other wingers here, so you've got Salah 1.65, you've got Iwobi 1.21, and then the next winger up is Semenyo, and you can see a lot of these passes very similar to kind of angles that Jeremy Doku is looking to play. Semenyo has that ability as well, to play the passes into somebody that is overlapping or underlapping, and he's able to do that on both sides. So if you're moving out Jeremy Doku, you've still got a player that can pick out the runs of a Nico O'Reilly into the box. So that's another useful thing to know about. These are just his open play crosses in the Premier League this season, and this is something I think when you add Erling Haaland to, he's going to get more goals from these crosses. Really good quality, particularly ones that he shoots across the 6-yard box. But Bournemouth are not quite the quality of player that's able to convert them. So this is something I would keep an eye on in the kind of like first 6 months if he does arrive in January. Look for these passes and see how they work out. And then, yeah, this is just a look at his chances created for Bournemouth in the Premier League. This season has 3 assists, 23 chances created. And I mentioned a little bit earlier in terms of the cutbacks. Semenyo's absolutely able to deliver these chances as well. Really good at it, particularly going on the outside and then firing that ball back from deep. More like this kind of area, as you can see, this red one here. Go past the opposition player and then fire it back inside. City, I think they're on 8 goals now. They have the most cutback chances created in the Premier League, most cutback goals in the Premier League, most XG via cutbacks in the Premier League this season. It's a staple of their attack, and Semenyo is somebody that can absolutely add even more to that. As you can see here, this is who has created the most from cutbacks this season. So 25 chances created for City, so they're not quite the top. But in terms of goals scored, 8. That is by far the most. Every other team is 3 or less. You're looking at XG, 5.8. Every other team is more like 4 or less. So you've got Chelsea 4.2. You've got Everton 3.7. So even though City aren't leading for the chances created, you can obviously tell by the XG being 5.8, they are creating more quality cutback chances than some of the other teams are able to do. And as I mentioned, Semenyo will be able to add to that. This is his shots from the 24-25 season. As you can see, a player that is comfortable shooting with either foot, 68 shots with his left, 57 with his right foot. Shooting in either corner as well, low on the ground. Has no issue whatsoever with either foot. And then this is his XG map from this season in the Premier League. I think he scored 1 penalty. And yeah, a lot of his shots are central, top of the box. 5.43 XG. I think that's first amongst wingers in the Premier League as well. So even if, like, ideally you'd want that to increase, 0.21 per shot is a good value per shot as well. 0.14, my bad. That's a good value per shot. I think Haaland's 0.13 per shot. So as I mentioned a bit earlier, he's been being more efficient this season in the Premier League. First amongst wingers, but you would want to see that increase a little bit at City. I think you get better opportunities, and then that will give him the chance to score more goals. And then this is him for cumulative XG and goals across the season. He's just come off quite a long run without scoring for Bournemouth, struggled to get that goal. But also, if you're looking at the XG, that's also dropped. It's not like he's getting loads and loads of chances created for him and he's failing. It's more that he's not having enough chances created for him, or he's not himself getting into good positions to take those shots compared to some of the XG that he was picking up earlier in the season. But he has since scored a couple goals for Bournemouth. And yeah, as I mentioned earlier in the video, same again here, you'd want to, and that's part of the concern, you'd want to see him generate more XG at City. I still think it's on the lower end from what you'd want to see. But he definitely has the ability, with the way he strikes the ball, to outperform those chances. And the ones that are 0.1 on the edge of the box, he's able to convert those chances. He just has that quality. But yeah, that's pretty much brings me to the end of the video. Just kind of general thoughts on the player, a few different angles to it. I think brings a lot of quality to the team that they don't have when it comes to being that outlet, the strength, the power of him as a ball carrier, being able to shoot on either foot, pass on either foot, and then the ease in which he's able to fit into the team because he is homegrown, not going to AFCON. That release clause needs to be paid quickly within the first 10 days of the window, makes that deal really quite a quick one to move along, and the player can come in right away. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I think I'm definitely a fan of the player, fan of the move. I think he has all the ability to make an immediate impact. He's kind of built for those kind of top 6 Champions League nights. I think he could have a real impact in a couple of those games. I think I mentioned earlier in terms of his work out of possession, if he's able to, at the bare minimum, deliver top performances out of possession, then just that alone is going to be a big improvement for the team. You then add on to that, if he's able to offer Doku good rotation, that helps not only for him coming into the team to play, but then to make sure that Doku is able to hit his best levels for the games that he does play. I think that's very important. And then outside of that, I think he's more than capable of winning us 6 points across the remaining games. And if he's able to do all of those things, then I think it would be a very, very helpful sign, and that could be the difference between City winning the Premier League this season. But yeah, that's pretty much it for my thoughts. Please let me know down below things you think I've missed out. If you had anything you wanted to ask me a question about, we can have that discussion in the comments down below. Make sure you like the video to help support the channel. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video, and we'll be back with plenty more content this week.